The morning sun had barely risen when the wind brushed gently across the golden hills of Casa Valley. A soft fog clung to the cliffside, whispering secrets of the mountains to anyone who cared to listen. On a winding road that led up to the highest point stood a sleek black car, its chrome glinting coldly in the light. Inside, Daniel Su sat quietly, gripping the steering wheel. He was in his mid-30s, clean-shaven, expensive suit, and a face that once knew warmth but now carried the exhaustion of greed and guilt. Beside him sat an old woman in a wheelchair, her silver hair tied neatly, her eyes clouded yet calm. This was his mother, Mrs. Yoon Ya Su, paralyzed from the waist down for the past 7 years. At her feet lay a small white dog, a Maltese named Snowy. The dog's dark eyes watched Daniel, confused by the silence. Daniel exhaled, his fingers trembling slightly. "Mom," he said quietly, forcing a smile. "The view here is beautiful, isn't it?" His mother turned her head slowly toward the window. Her voice was soft and slow, like wind through dry reeds. "You always liked this place when you were little. You said the clouds looked close enough to touch." Daniel's throat tightened. He remembered. As a child, he'd run up this very hill, laughing, with Snowy's mother chasing him. His mother had packed sandwiches then, and they'd sat together watching eagles glide across the sky. Back then, they were poor, but happy. Now, wealth clung to him like armor, and guilt like rust beneath it. He looked out at the cliff edge. Sharp, jagged rocks far below. He whispered under his breath, "It'll all be over soon." The story began months earlier, when Daniel's company, a real estate empire built on loans and deception, began collapsing. Investors wanted money, partners wanted blood. The only solution left was to unlock his late father's inheritance, which required his mother's signature. But she refused. "I won't sell the house your father built with his hands," she had said. "Money can't replace what we loved." That refusal set something dark in motion inside him. He began seeing her as an obstacle, a wall between him and survival. The pressure of debt twisted his love into something desperate. He wheeled her out of the car and toward the cliff's edge. The air was sharp, almost painful. Snowy followed, tail wagging, unaware of the darkness clinging to the moment. "Daniel," his mother said softly, "why did you bring me here?" He smiled faintly, kneeling beside her. "To show you the view. One last time." Her wrinkled hand touched his cheek. "You sound like your father when he was saying goodbye before business trips." He flinched. "Don't talk about him." She smiled sadly. "You have his eyes, Daniel. But your heart, it's fading." He looked away. "I'm doing this for us," he whispered. Her voice turned to confusion. "For us." He gripped the handles of the wheelchair. The wind howled. His heartbeat thundered. "For both of us," he said. Then, without letting himself think, he pushed. The wheelchair rolled forward, silent but for the squeak of its wheels. Snowy barked, once, then twice, louder, as if trying to warn him. Then, a scream. The sound vanished into the valley below. Daniel stumbled backward, gasping. His hands trembled violently. The air felt heavy, suffocating. He stared at the empty space where the wheelchair had been. He expected relief. Instead, his chest felt hollow. Snowy stood by the cliff edge, barking wildly, looking down. Daniel shouted, "Come here." But the dog didn't move. He turned and fled to the car, his breathing ragged. He slammed the door shut, started the engine, and drove away, the tires screeching, leaving behind a trail of dust and guilt. But Snowy didn't follow. For 2 days, Daniel locked himself in his apartment, curtains drawn, whiskey bottle empty, phone buzzing non-stop with creditors' calls. He couldn't sleep. The sound of wind haunted him. The smell of the cliff, cold and metallic, lingered in his nose. On the 3rd night, as rain pounded against his windows, he heard something faint, scratching at his door. He froze. The sound grew louder. A low whine followed. Daniel opened the door slowly. Snowy stood there, drenched, dirty, shaking. The dog's fur was matted, and its paws were bleeding. In its mouth hung a torn piece of fabric, his mother's shawl. Daniel fell to his knees. No, that's not possible. He grabbed the shawl, muddy, ripped, but real. Snowy barked once, then looked toward the window, as if begging him to follow. Dash dash dash. By morning, he couldn't resist. He drove back to the cliff, Snowy on the seat beside him. The road looked the same, peaceful, quiet, cruelly indifferent. When he reached the spot, the wheelchair was gone. Only a faint scrape mark remained on the rocks. Snowy jumped out, running toward the edge, barking frantically. Then the dog darted into the forest nearby. Snowy, Daniel called, running after it. Through branches and thorns, he followed until he saw it, a small wooden hut built into the trees. The door was open, smoke rising from a fireplace. Inside sat a figure, frail, wrapped in blankets. Daniel's heart stopped. It was his mother. Dash dash dash. Her eyes opened slowly as he entered. For a moment, silence filled the hut. Only the fire crackled. Daniel, she whispered. He fell to his knees. Mom. How are you alive? Tears blurred his vision. He crawled closer, trembling. She lifted a weak hand and touched his face again, the same way she had that day on the cliff. Snowy saved me, she said faintly. When the chair fell, I thought it was over. But something stopped it. Branches, maybe. I lost consciousness. When I woke, your dog was beside me. He brought me here. A hiker found us the next morning. Daniel couldn't speak. His chest heaved with shame. I thought I lost you. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, he saw not anger, but sorrow. You lost yourself, Daniel. Not me. Dash dash dash. He broke down completely, sobbing into her lap like a child. The weight of his guilt crushed him. Snowy curled beside them, resting its head on his mother's foot. I didn't want to die, she said softly. But in that moment, I prayed you'd live long enough to see what love really means. Even if it was too late. Daniel shook his head violently. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Then start by forgiving yourself, she said. That's harder than forgiving others. Dash dash dash. In the following weeks, Daniel stayed in that hut with her. He cooked, cleaned, and took care of her. He sold his car, his watches, his suits, everything. They lived on little, but for the first time, he felt peace. He learned to push her wheelchair not out of duty, but love. He rebuilt the small garden behind the hut, planting wildflowers she used to like. Every morning, Snowy would fetch water from the stream, wagging its tail proudly. The days were simple, real, healing, dash dash dash. But the world doesn't forget easily. One afternoon, two men in black suits arrived, representatives from the bank. They demanded repayment. When Daniel said he had nothing, they laughed. Then you'll lose the estate, they sneered. His mother watched quietly from the doorway. Let it go, she told him afterward. We never owned anything. We only borrowed from time. He realized then that his wealth, his power, none of it mattered. Only love had permanence. Dash dash dash. Winter came. Snow blanketed the valley in white. His mother's health weakened, but her eyes still carried light. One night, as they sat by the fire, she took his hand. Promise me something, she said softly. Anything, he whispered. When I'm gone, don't bury me in marble. Scatter my ashes at the cliff, the place I forgave you. Tears streamed down his face. Don't talk like that. She smiled faintly. I'm already halfway across. Snowy whimpered beside her, as if understanding. Dash dash dash. A few nights later, Daniel woke to silence. The fire had gone out. Snowy was lying by the bed, unmoving. His mother's hand rested lightly on the dog's fur, both of them still. Daniel fell to the floor, screaming into the night. His heart broke open. Dash dash dash. Weeks later, he stood again at the cliff. The sky was gray, the wind cold. He held a small urn in one hand and Snowy's collar in the other. He scattered her ashes into the valley. They danced in the air, soft, weightless, free. Then he whispered, "I love you, Mom. Thank you for saving me, even when I didn't deserve it." As he turned to leave, a single snowflake landed on his palm. He smiled. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard Snowy bark, faint but clear, carried by the wind. Years passed. Daniel rebuilt his life, not as a tycoon, but as a caretaker at a small orphanage. He dedicated every day to children who had no parents, teaching them how to live with kindness, how to forgive. On his desk, he kept 2 pictures, one of his mother smiling in her wheelchair, and one of Snowy sitting proudly beside her. Sometimes, at dusk, he'd look out toward the mountains. The wind would carry the scent of wildflowers, her favorite, and he'd close his eyes, whispering, "I'm still here. Still learning." Because in the end, it wasn't the fall that destroyed him. It was the miracle of being caught by love he tried to throw away. And because he forgot the dog remembered love.